From ashes to ashes, or in this case, from waves to waves, a former Navy ship meets its end the same way it found its beginning, out on the water. But the seafloor is more than just a destination, and a watery grave is actually the beginning of something new. I'm Nick Reagan, and in this Live 5 deep dive, we are diving deeper than ever before with anchor reporter Justin Kolar, whose latest story on the fate of an old abandoned naval vessel turned into something much, much more. Join me as we discuss life, death, and rebirth. Hey, Justin, thanks for coming by the studio.
Thanks for having me, Nick. I appreciate it.
All right. Now, you've been on quite a little bit of an adventure here in the last week or so following the fate of this old Navy ship, haven't you?
Yeah, we really have. So this whole story, CCA partnered up with the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources to remove this Navy vessel that had been just left abandoned in Bohicket Creek for years. And through past reporting that we've done here, it had kind of been identified as a ship that needed to be removed from that. It was leaking, all kinds of things. But we set up an opportunity with the CCA to go out 32 miles into the Atlantic Ocean, kind of chasing after the ship as they had towed it out there to see how they were going to sink it and put it 100 feet down to the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, I think that a lot of time as journalists, we want to, these are the stories that sort of captivate us, right? Like we want to go out offshore and watch them sink an old Navy vessel.
Absolutely.
It's certainly not the day-to-day, but certainly folks who have been outside near Bohicket Creek, they will have recognized this vessel, and to see it finally moved out of there and now find a new home is absolutely amazing. But it just kind of begged the question, what do you do with a 120-foot Navy vessel that's been abandoned out in the middle of nowhere?
And that was, I think, the question for a lot of people is this giant ship is out here in the creek, and people who lived in the area, I know, were frustrated by it. Just not only the visual, seeing it just kind of, in the middle of the marsh, but also when you got closer to it, we have video, you can see just the ooze kind of coming out of it. Because, think, this ship was 120 foot long, and, whoever knows how, low the keel is, but it's just stuck in the pluff mud there. Anything that's in that, so you're talking like asbestos in the pipes, the diesel fuel, anything else. I'm not, a specialist on that, but over time, it rusts in the salt water, and it all just leaks out, as, it goes back to the earth. But that's not stuff that you want to have in there in such a sensitive ecosystem anyway. So when you got close to it, you could just see that like sheen over the water when you get close. And it is such a sensitive ecosystem, and the sight line anyway is terrible just to have that kind of obstructing your view. So the state recently passed a new law where they can, kind of take these vessels that have been abandoned or derelict over a certain amount of time, criminally charge the people who owned them. So the owner of this ship had bought it at auction, thought they were going to do something with it, and it was too cost prohibitive, and there they left it in the middle of the creek. And you see that a lot, closer in the Charleston Harbor too, with sailboats. Yeah. Some of those, they're made of plexiglass, so you can't really repurpose them like this, which kind of goes back to your question, what are you supposed to do with this, right? So you see those sailboats that the DNR and CCA have been removing, they just crush them up and they go to the landfill, So with this ship, in particular, the Hazar that got sunk, there was a whole process after they towed it and removed it out of the creek. And this all also begs the question, just how much did it cost, right? This is a huge cost preventive measure too. So it's all volunteer driven that they were able to do this, but they had to take every pipe out of it. They had to drain, gallons and gallons and gallons of fuel and liquids out of the ship to then make it safe to sink it. Because you don't want to just remove all this chemicals from a marsh and then just dump it in the ocean, So all of that was then safely removed and recycled, I assume, safely. But even if you look at the pictures that we have of the ship as it stood in the marsh, it had a mast, it had a crane on it, and several other things that they deemed not safe to sink. So all of that had to be removed and then either, melted down, scrapped, what have you. We talked to some people who were on the mission that we were on, and they were able to get portholes and things like that to keep that they had like removed and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's a huge, I mean, this was the course of several, months, if not a full calendar year, to get that removed from the marsh, completely stripped, to then where really what you see in the video that you're about to see is just the hull of this solid, steel or iron ship then being sunk. And we can get into this, but the whole purpose of that is out at sea, off our coast on the shelf, is just sand. It looks like a desert underwater. Right. All of these like microorganisms and corals and fish need something hard to latch onto. So you don't want to just encourage like dumping out at sea. It's not that, but these vessels or other things we can talk about too, examples here, they sink, and within months, there's actual coral reef and, schools of fish that call that home.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think, off the coast, we've got all these things out in the ocean, and we do, but certainly where people like to fish is where the fish are, which is reefs and other areas where, fish make homes. And unfortunately, if there's nothing out there, if it's just a sandy bottom, the coral polyps can't form, and coral's kind of honestly the basis for a lot of the sea life out there. So having these artificial structures out there just give them something to latch onto, and then build up and create coral colonies, which then encourages fish, which then, ultimately down the line encourages economics, right? With your fishing and your tourism and all of that. And I think that that's pretty well explained in your story. Yeah. But you do go on this adventure. Yeah. And I think that's the perspective from which the story is told. And I just want to encourage anybody who's listening to the podcast to afterwards take a moment and go to either live5news.com or go to our Live 5 YouTube page and watch the package version or the video version of the podcast, because as much as you'll enjoy the audio experience, because you do a great job with the audio.
Thank you.
It's a visual experience as well, watching this ship sink in a matter of seconds.
Yeah. Well, the craziest thing was I've never seen a ship sink, and I don't think that a lot of people have. And that's part of the coolest part about our job is we take people to places that they wouldn't be able to normally see themselves, and go on that adventure and bring everyone along with us. But we were out there, and that day, it was a couple Sundays ago, it was pretty rough out there. And they were even questioning if this mission should continue, because at the time there were 3-foot swells, and you're in a fishing boat out there. It can get pretty choppy, very choppy actually. And the tugboat had already left that was pulling the Navy vessel, and that took a full day to get out there, because you're thinking how slow they have to pull that thing to go out there. And they decided, if we don't do it now, we're not going to be able to. So we went, and it was just incredible, because we got out, like I say, 32 miles out to sea where this was going to be, and they threw the buoy to mark where, this is where it's going to go. And they pulled the plug basically on the ship and opened some valves. It took an hour and a half.
Really?
For it to actually go, but it was so gradual until it wasn't.
Right.
You were like watching it, and they have like a water line painted on these big ships to know like where it should be sitting in the water. And you could slowly maybe it's like an inch above that, nothing gradual or nothing drastic, excuse me. And then it was just like
all of a sudden
it flipped up on its side and went completely down. Wow. Just like the Titanic, like what we think the Titanic did.
Right.
But it was incredible. It was like we're all just waiting, sitting there like, getting nauseous, getting tossed around.
Did they do it yet? Or
right. What are we waiting for? What's happening? And then it was like literally everyone's like, hey, the boat's going down. And it just like
blink and you miss it.
Yeah. Wow. It was then when it went, it was within 30 seconds.
Wow. All right. Well, let's take a look at that reporting, because I think that you can really grasp sort of what it might be like to be out there again. Thanks to your storytelling.
Yeah. Thank you.
Long before sunrise on the Charleston coast, hope lit the way.
6:05 Sunday morning out here at Ripley Light Marina on the triple net, about to go offshore to sink an Old Navy vessel. We're kind of watching the forecast because it's changed a little bit. Hopefully we don't get too much rain out there, but seas could be a little rough once we leave. We just have to wait and see.
Under a sky still stubbornly holding on tonight, our crew pushed off. Coffee coursing through our veins.
Seems like a good idea on paper.
The captain's playlist thumping through the speakers. But despite the beat, this was no pleasure cruise, sailing straight into northeasterly winds. But our journey here began long before this morning. The 120-foot Navy torpedo retriever, the Hussar, spent 4 years stalled in the marsh, leaking oil, blocking waterways, and becoming the face of a growing problem. Its removal was also the first real test of South Carolina's newly strengthened abandoned vessel law, criminally punishing those who destroy marine habitat through desertion.
This was a really expensive project to do. And thankfully, the leadership in the state of South Carolina, our General Assembly, all understood the ramifications.
From Bohicket Creek to the Atlantic Ocean here, this Navy torpedo boat, the TWR-141 Hussar, represents the first derelict boat reclaimed by the state and now repurposed into an artificial reef, turning what was an eyesore for many into an underwater home at the bottom of the sea.
You're taking something that had a previous life and you're repurposing it to have another 25 years minimum producing hard bottom habitat for anglers and fishermen and divers and whoever wants to use the resource.
A reclamation, yes, but also a resurrection. 32 miles offshore, in 100 feet of water. The South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, Stevens Towing, and the Coastal Conservation Association all prepared to give this ship a second chance.
Most of what is off of our coast is sand. When guys go out and when people go out and they fish, they're fishing those live bottom areas, and so they're putting a lot of fishing pressure on those specific spots. So what we do with the Artificial Reef program is we spread out that fishing to encompass all different sites. We're actually growing populations of fish. These artificial reefs act exactly like natural reefs.
Freed from the creek and floating above its final resting place, the Hussar drew its last breath.
This project we've been working on for almost 2 years now. So it's kind of that last big sigh. We got it, yay, okay, now we can go try and start all over again.
And then, without warning,
oh, there it goes. Oh my gosh.
it sank. Its dark silhouette slipping through the sunlit waves. Within minutes, it was gone. Seemingly replaced in a second by the spotted dolphins now circling the site.
And it is a fantastic experience. What we do for the marine environment off the coast of South Carolina is a fantastic feeling.
But on board the Triple Net, a boat donated for the day, another transformation was underway. One known only by few. Lance LaHue, the boat's owner, had undergone his final round of radiation just 24 hours before.
Last day of radiation, 33 radiation trips. Stage 4, Gleason 9 prostate cancer. I've got metastasis to my ribs and to my hips, so it's moved outside of the prostate, which means it's in my tissues, it's in my blood, so yeah.
The fight, as Lance knows, will be lifelong. Yet there he was, steady at the helm, helping guide a wreck to rebirth.
Anything we could do to help out, we certainly would like to do that.
He and his girlfriend had planned to be in warmer waters. A trip to Turks and Caicos, postponed by treatment. Here, instead, choosing to give others a front row seat to this saltwater baptism.
I think this is amazing. I think being part of this today was something that you will never forget. Watching that ship, just waiting and waiting, then watching it go down was so fast. Faster than we thought, so it was amazing.
A boat reborn. A man choosing love over fear. And a crew united by conservation, cigarettes, trail mix, and the tenacious belief that things seemingly forgotten can once again find their flourish.
We took an obstacle and made it an opportunity. 6 months' time, you won't even recognize it.
Because here in the Holy City, some of the greatest miracles happen just beyond the jetties.
So we saw just how rough those waves were. Mm-hmm. Originally, you guys had planned to dive out there and get some underwater footage. That obviously didn't end up happening.
No, we got the call that they had to scrap that part of the adventure, that we weren't going to be able to scuba dive because it was just too rough out there when it was going on. And the divers, it was to get off the boat when the ship is rocking like that would just be too much, and then the currents underneath. So luckily we were still able to bring our GoPros out there to give some of that like underwater perspective. But a lot of that like diving work, like obviously you have to be certified and everything to do that, but a lot of that was done out there before they even sank it to identify, you know, if this was a spot where they could, you know, feasibly drop this where it wouldn't be like crashing into something else, or to make sure that the bottom was like suitable for that. So there had already been like dive teams out there. We were hoping that when it went down that we would be able to be far enough away to see it like going through the water column like that, and then after to go down. Because you brought up the economic aspect of these wrecks out there. There are folks who go out there and scuba dive and fish strictly at these sites. And certainly something like this, an abandoned, or not abandoned now, but a Navy vessel, it's large enough to where you could safely, with, you know, like a dive team, go through it. Really? And certainly that, I mean, that will be tours. People will come to see that and do that. And that's what we were hoping to do, to be, you know, some of the first to go through it.
That'd be crazy.
But that will certainly be an adventure for another day.
Okay, well, we've teed this up in the intro and then throughout your story as well. But I think one of the things that all journalists do when you've been doing the job long enough is you get the press release or you get the pitch from your manager or from yourself, more than likely. And the day you got to shoot it, you've already written most of the story in your head. You know what you're going to get,
right?
And then you go out and get it. And then sometimes you head out with the idea of what you're going to get, and you stumble across something completely different, or there's a surprise and a twist. And the twist at the end of your story with Lance LeHue, I just thought was, I mean, you couldn't have known.
No,
you didn't know about his story before going out there.
No, we didn't. And I think, you know, you bring up such a good point. Like as journalists, you do kind of anticipate just in an effort to save yourself time in the end, because we have deadlines and there's things that you have to get done to make the show and things like that. So you do have an idea of where you want to take things. And like you said, there is some pre-writing involved, but you always kind of keep your eyes and ears open for things that only you experience out there, that you can read a press release, but that press release is never going to tell you about this man who's struggling with cancer, or whatever the case may be.
The human element is often not in the press release,
and that's so often maybe even the most important part of our job is bringing those other things to light and having those, you know, emotional reveals and things like that. And it was funny. So when we were out there, Lance, who was an incredible gentleman, donated the boat for everyone to use that day. It's his boat, to be able to, as I phrased it in the package, to kind of witness this saltwater baptism with this boat going down. So many people on board were talking about the emotional finality aspect of this ship, seeing its end. And I was listening to him talk about it, and he's like, oh no, I kind of think of it the other way. It's a whole new opportunity for this ship that had been, you know, just rotting in the marsh. Now it can do a whole slew of other things, you know, like we mentioned, the reefs, the diving, the fishing, what have you. And he was like, it's kind of like, he's like, I'm in a new stage of my life right now. And he was having this like private conversation with someone. I was kind of eavesdropping, talking about how he just 24 hours before this adventure had received his last round of radiation for his pancreatic cancer. No, excuse me, not pancreatic, prostate cancer, excuse me. And stage 4, and how he was kind of processing with this new phase of his own life. And I thought, man, how beautiful that he didn't even know that this was kind of going to be going on when he had donated the boat like months before for us to use on whatever day this is. So kind of knowing that then completely changed for me the direction I kind of wanted to take this story, kind of bringing the ship and Lance together and kind of pairing that imagery to be like, you know, life situations may change, and, you know, we all go through phases of our life that, dictate different responses. But in his case, you know, something that, you know, could be such a fearful time. And I kind of wrote to this as well. He's a man who chose love over fear. He and his girlfriend were going to go to Turks and Caicos over this same amount of time. But then with this treatment going on, that all had to be completely scrapped. And, you know, hopefully they still are able to go on that trip. They're going to take the boat out there to spend some time down there. But instead decided to give back and kind of use his boat as a blessing and as an opportunity for other people to enjoy something. And I mean, they enjoyed it themselves too. It was, I mean, how could you not? Like, seeing something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely felt like a reflection moment for him to go from final treatment, which sounds like it is not a positive final treatment sort of situation, to getting on the boat again, a place that I'm sure he loves, to witness this sort of death and rebirth of this ship.
Absolutely.
Was for him. It definitely felt like he knew exactly where he wanted to be that weekend, despite everything else that's going on in the world. I think that's just fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, but this ship is not the first time that we've seen an abandoned vessel head to the bottom of the ocean to become a reef. Can you just explain a little bit about, how often we're doing this and whether or not we're going to see more of this in the future?
So just a month previous, in November, CCA and SCDNR had paired up to sink a tugboat. Situation was different because, like we mentioned in the story here, this was the first ship that the state had kind of seized under this new abandoned derelict boat law. So that's why this one was, more notable than some of the others. But the CCA and the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources have paired up, and in their partnership that spanned several years, this was the 25th artificial reef deployment that they've done.
Okay.
The second of this type, I guess, is like with a large ship so far this year. They already have another one planned, I think, in like 2 to 3 weeks. So they're kind of churning these out in strategic locations, and they're actually going to be working, the Department of Natural Resources, rather, is going to be working on a book, pamphlet kind of, to show people off coast where all of these are.
Interesting.
Because it was, and you'll see this in the package too if you watch, within literally seconds of that ship hitting the bottom, because when it went, the ship is 120 feet long, the bottom was to 100. So it sticks straight up for several seconds, hitting the bottom before it then sinks. After it went down, a huge pod of spotted dolphins, which we don't get here in Charleston. They're only like out at sea and like in other areas where it's warmer, immediately started circling it.
They're curious creatures.
They are. And it's just incredible that they can realize that something's like going on and get there. So they were saying within like several months, that wreck will look completely different, and we'll have, I'm assuming large grouper, redfish, all kinds of, sea life down there. But the partnership that the Coastal Conservation Association and the SCDNR has built has kind of been able to repurpose a lot of what would just otherwise be junk. They have, and I don't know the specifics of how they got it, but they had commandeered a like New York City subway car that they sank out there. And that's like a similar thing. It's huge, made of steel or iron, metal, just sank down there, and you can go through it now if you're a diver.
So are all of these, is the one that they're going to sink here in a couple weeks and some of the previous ones, are they roughly in the same area, or are they spread? Are they trying to create sort of a graveyard sort of reef thing, or is it just spread out? Do you know?
They're spread out. They're spread out pretty far. Some of them are in like similar areas, but like if you were, let's just say, like if you were going to dive that one, it's not something that you could dive down, hit this one, hit this one, hit this one, and come up. They're far enough away to where you would have to, take the boat to them. But if you were going on a fishing trip, you could very easily
go from one to the other.
Okay. It's also fascinating. I didn't even know this, but this is just kind of an added piece to this. When you're downtown, like let's say on the Battery, or even off of like Fort Moultrie, and you see those giant shipping container ships come into port, I always just assume that, they have really good clockwork. They're just coming in, like one after another.
Yeah.
Once you get, and someone's going to correct me on this, and I encourage it, it's several miles out there.
Yeah, they're all just parked out
there. They're parked out there. It's just like a big parking lot of all these ships, these giant shipping containers where they wait to then be called in, and the harbor master has to come out and guide every single one in.
Oh, yeah.
So we saw all that, which was really cool. These graveyards are farther than that.
Sure.
So there are some that are closer, like beyond the jetties, but they don't want people doing like recreational activities in the path of these, shipping containers.
Yeah, the commerce, of course.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
I saw somewhere on the internet, and I have no idea this is true, so I'm going to go ahead and spout it off anyways. Yeah. That apparently the Navy they sink a lot of military gear way out. I saw an image of this like graveyard of old Navy tanks. And it was just like thousands of tanks. They're just on the bottom of the ocean.
Wow.
And it mostly it's because you can get reefs and stuff out of it, but mostly it is the cheapest way to dispose of some of these really high tech things that you can't.
You don't want other people to get.
Well, you don't want them to have the sensitive information. They still have to go and remove all the most sensitive stuff. But if you bury something 100 feet underwater, or I think in the case of the tanks, it's even deeper than that.
Deeper.
But nobody's gonna go down there and collect it. So I think it's fascinating how much stuff we bury at sea. As long as it's going to a good purpose, I think it's
fine. Yeah,
and it's safe. It's probably okay.
My great-great-grandpa, this is just kind of adding on to that, served in the Navy in World War I. And I was like, where is that boat, right? I'd love to know. I at one time knew the name of it, can't think of it now. They sank it off the coast of California.
Yeah.
Like in a training exercise where they blew it up.
Yeah, lots of them are. And when I was reading your story, I was answering the question, what do you do with these big boats? And it seems like you either throw them in a reserve fleet and mothball them, or you use them for target practice,
which is crazy.
Or in this case, you sink them and make wreaths. You can also sort of recycle them, but again, that is the most expensive option because it just takes so much. But one more thing here before you go, because you weren't alone on this trip.
No.
You took our investigative producer, Michael Allison, with you.
We sure did.
And one thing people maybe don't realize is that going 32 miles off the coast, if you've never done it, things are a little different out there. And I think Michael Allison struggled just a little bit, didn't he?
He definitely did. I had called him the night before and I was like, hey man, if you've never gone out, like you might want to load up on some Dramamine and, get the little wristbands and things like that. He's like, oh no, man, I'm going to be fine. This is nothing. This is light work, right? We got out past like Fort Sumter, past the jetties. His whole color just changed. And he's like gripping onto the top. And again, we're like up in this like fishing boat and he's just like looking a little less intrepid than before. He's looking kind of scared. And I was like, hey man, how you feeling? He's like,
not good.
Dude, how long is this ride going to be? And I'm like, we're not even halfway out there. All told, we were out there for like 6 hours.
Yeah.
From like 5 o'clock in the morning until 1 p.m., I think is what it ended up being. And I think I saw him for all of 30 minutes.
Yeah.
He, after that moment, was to the belly of the beast, which is like the worst place to go.
Right.
And was hugging the ivory throne, as it were.
Lord.
And the craziest part about all that was, and again, I don't want to harp on this too much because, he was really sick. But I was like, hey, knocking on the door. I'm like, we really need to film this stand-up. I can't film it myself. Like, I had never used his camera before. Right. So it was a miracle, honestly, that I was able to, like, shoot what we got because he has his own camera. And I was like, hey, buddy, like, if you can come out and just shoot this.
Could you be vertical for about 45 seconds?
Hey, yeah, okay. Shot it off the side of the boat. Just, I felt terrible for him, but you live and learn. And now I don't think, if he ever goes out to sea again, I don't think he'll do it without a healthy supply of Dramamine.
I feel so bad for our photographers sometimes because, we know what the story is that we're recruiting them to come and shoot for us.
That's the key.
And I think sometimes we don't tell them the full grasp of what they're getting into.
Oh, it'll be fine. Yeah,
you'll be
easy.
fine. And I took a photographer down 100 feet underground and I was like, hey, just so you know, like, it's a tunnel. It's going to be real tight. And like, I know you've got a lot of gear and everything. And by the end of it, we spent 2 or 3 hours like hunched over climbing through gear and whatnot. And, sometimes we, these poor photographers, they got a heck of a job.
Because we have like not that they aren't, but we have the ambition for the story. And we're like, oh, this is going to be so great. All the visual plans and everything we're going to do. Just need someone who's
just going to carry a 20-pound camera around.
Brave or naive enough to go with me. So there is some of that stuff. Deception as well.
Well, excellent story. And again, if you're listening to the pod, go either to the website or go to our YouTube page. It'll be up there, and you should really just check out, the visual elements because there's something to behold, especially the dolphins there.
Yeah, that was really cool. We're just like, they're circling, stick the GoPro in there. Thankfully, we got them. But yeah.
All right. Well, Justin, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.